Stranger Things is a generational show, plain and simple. Each season is treated like an event, and that's for good reason. There really hasn't been a single miss in its entire runtime, and the newest season doesn't look like it's gonna break the streak. At the time of writing and recording this, the second part of the final season has yet to come out, but I imagine that Will is going to challenge Vecna to a gloving battle while the Demogorgon's gritty in the back, or something like that. But with all the Stranger Things hype, I can't help but think and reflect on the action figures released for this franchise as it nears its end. I'm a 1/12 collector, so I'm pretty interested, and there's actually some bangers, some stinkers, and everything else in between when it comes to Stranger Things action figures. So join me as I go over not only the history, but the story and impact of Stranger Things and its action figures. Stranger Things was created by brothers Matt and Ross Duffer, as they wanted to create a show heavily inspired by 80s horror icons like Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter, and most of all, Stephen King. They also wanted a mix of science fiction and horror, so they pulled from animes like Akira and games like Last of Us to create Stranger Things, which was originally Montauk. But that's way lamer than Stranger Things, and with Netflix already popping off with Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, the platform was there. All the Duffer Bros had to do was cook up, and cook up they did. The Duffer Brothers had this idea of bizarre experiments in the Cold War era, leading to the creation of this otherworldly monster. They tied this with their other ideas of a mysterious outsider and the missing child. So Will was always going to get cooked, no matter what. These combined elements, along with the perfectly crafted characters, the adults, teenagers, and of course the children, led to the filming and eventual release of Stranger Things Season 1 in July of 2016. Stranger Things Season 1 went for the long episode format opposed to the more standard 22 episode shorter format, as the Duffer Brothers wanted to really explore these characters and for it to feel like one big movie. The first season introduced us to Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will. But Will goes missing the night of their D&D shenanigans. This prompts Will's mom, Joyce, to get a tad bit worried and inform the police chief, Hopper, that her boy is missing. And soon, pretty much everyone is looking for my dog Will, including the gang. But all they find is this mysterious girl, 11. It's discovered that she got some serious powers and could possibly track Will down. At the same time, Joyce gets a call from her son and starts tweaking. But as things start looking good, at least for the gang, since Joyce isn't having too much fun, Will's body is discovered in the lake. But everyone is like, yeah, nah, that ain't bro. And something way more sinister is going on. The guys fight, but eventually make up as they plan to fully rescue Will from the Upside Down. At the same time, Nancy and Jonathan, the teenagers, explain their Demogorgon encounter to Hopper and Joyce, who has already encountered the Demogorgon. This otherworldly Upside Down creature that was directly involved in Will's disappearance. There's no time for that though, since they learn of 11's existence and her abilities, or lack thereof, since she's pretty tired. And the kids make her a makeshift deprivation tank in the middle school so that she can regain her powers and find Will. The evil science dudes pop out though and try to stop her, but are swiftly taken out. The Demogorgon pulls up just to get cooked by 3 teenagers and soon gets eviscerated by a child, so nothing but L's for this thing. All while Joyce and Hopper find Will in the Upside Down, alive and well. Well, I mean, kinda alive and kinda well. But the season ends with Will coughing up this weird upside down slug with visions of the Upside Down still lurking. Wow. Season 1 of Stranger Things is just one of them you had to be there type experiences. It was massive. Even as a young lad, I knew this was special. Netflix's viewership was through the roof. It got around 20% more viewership than my GOAT Daredevil got, which at that point was the most viewed season on Netflix. Around 14 million people tuned in on average, and Stranger Things was nominated for and won a lot of awards. Since Netflix isn't, or at least at the time wasn't stupid, that second season was announced to be coming in October of 2017. Only a year and some change after the first season. Along with the announcement of the second season, Netflix started handing the Stranger Things license out to companies for future merchandise. Egos, notebooks, clothes, and importantly, action figures. And of course, the first company to come knocking was Funko. We all know about Funko Pops, and those were plentiful for Stranger Things. But at this point, Funko had started to branch out into action figures with their Five Nights at Freddy's line, and with something even bigger in Stranger Things falling into their lap, they were willing to try anything. But that would take some time, and would actually come out after the second season, so let's go over that real quick. Season 2 of Stranger Things released October 27th of 2017, and saw our main cast noticeably older, and immediately things are pretty strange. Things. Joyce Joyce has a new boyfriend, Hobbit Ninja Turtle dude. And there's this new girl, Max, but that's not too important because good old Willy Boy has been seeing a tentacle monster, the Mind Flayer. And on Halloween, that little slug dude that he coughed up is found by Dustin. And he names the little thing Dart, who doesn't look like the Giants quarterback to me, but I don't know, who knows. Things continue to escalate as the Mind Flayer latches onto Will, who's now acting very suspicious and would like things to be kept cold. Dart is also revealed to be a baby Demogorgon that really likes the taste of cat, which just breaks my heart. At the same time as all of this, which I haven't even touched on, 11 has been living with Hopper and wants to figure out who her real mother is, as she's been having visions about her. She tracks her down, and telepathically 11 learns how messed up her origin is, and goes to track down another test subject in the experiment she was a part of. Number 8. 8 turns out to be a little too hardcore for 11, so she dips, but she got a better grasp of her powers, so it wasn't a total waste of time. Back at Hawkins, the gang discovers tunnels leading to the Upside Down, so they torch them, but Will is not taking it very well. Everyone is at least a little smart though, so they deduce that Will has been overtaken by the Mind Flayer. But that just means that it knows where they are, so the Demodogs come and attack the lab where the gang is. This is where the goat, Bob, dies. But everyone else is rescued and Will tells them to close the gate via Morse code. The Mind Flayer peeps game though and sends a Demodog to take them out, but 11 pops back out in the nick of time to save them. In the final episode, Hopper and 11 close the gate to the Upside Down, and everyone else drives the Mind Flayer out of Will by cranking the heat up. And everything seems really chill. They won. For now, at least. But that's a problem for 2019. If Season 1 didn't do it, Season 2 surely did. Stranger Things was a bona fide hit, there's no doubt about it anymore. Season 2 built on everything Season 1 set up perfectly. And this is a theme that Stranger Things will only get better at as time goes on. And right on cue, Funko was ready to reveal what they had been cooking up. And it was definitely the start of all time. They released three packs of 3.75-inch figures. One with 11, Lucas, and Mike. One with Dustin, Will, and an open-mouthed Demogorgon. And the last was a Funko Fall Convention exclusive featuring a very sickly upside-down Will, a closed-mouthed Demogorgon, and a blonde wig 11. And I mean, I understand what they were going for. There are a number of collectors for this scale, and this scale was the most popular scale for the time period that Stranger Things was set in, so in concept, it should be a slam dunk. Not to mention the care and detail within each figure, but they were still 3.75-inch figures, so it wasn't too much detail. And I don't know, I would just always see these guys in the clearance section at GameStop or something. I really don't think too many people cared, even if the show was so fresh. There were also single releases, but like I said, it didn't really scratch that itch for most collectors. 2017 though had another surprise in store. Todd McFarlane wanted a piece of the Stranger Things pie, so they obtained the license and released their first 2 figures in November of 2017, being 11 and Hopper, in the more common 112-ish style. They were around 7 inches tall, and the promo images for both look absolutely insane. But 11 looks much worse, and Hopper looks like Ryan Gosling a bit, but doesn't look too bad. But looking at the figures as a whole, you can just tell how much these figures meant to everyone over at McFarlane. Detail-wise, this was the best that 1/12 figures could offer at that time. And the articulation may have been sacrificed, but I say if you can make up for it with a sculpt, then it's worth it. These figures were based on their Season 1 designs and didn't miss a beat, and their accessories didn't either. Other than the face sculpt, at least on 11, and the very stiff joints, these guys were a really good start. And McFarlane was far from finished, since they came back in spring and fall of 2018 to deliver a total of 10 new Stranger Things figures. So we was for sure eating good. In spring of 2018, McFarlane released Lucas, Dustin, and the Demogorgon. These all have varying degrees of quality, so I'll start with the worst. Lucas is just awful. That is not bro. Like I said before, sculpt-wise, everything was there, but my goodness, who was the reference? Because it wasn't this kid. Dustin was better, but that also kinda isn't bro either. I feel like they over-exaggerated the extreme features in his face. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but he looks weird, right? But like always, them accessories and that body sculpt were genuinely on point. Man, and bring back action figures with backpacks for real. When I see a figure come with a backpack, it just makes it 10 times better. I don't know what it is. Lastly, for the spring slate was this deluxe Demogorgon. And there was no face to mess up on this time, so all McFarlane had to do was cook. And wow, cook he did. This is beyond great. My only complaint really is the articulation choices, but I mean, I get it. But everything else they got down perfectly. The mixture of pale paint with red marks, the weird wrinkly, scaly skin, and the mouth. Dude, they cared so much and you can just tell. And I'm so glad we have this in general. It looks absolutely amazing. The next figures to release were of course Mike and Will. And the face was a bit better on Mike, but it still kinda has that uncanny feel. But I mean, he's the exact same story as Dustin and Lucas, really. Great sculpt, great accessories. There were 2 Wills released, one regular and one sickly upside down version, like the Funko releases. Both had the same sculpt, but the upside down Will had some subtle scuff marks in his clothes and has a pale and bruised complexion. Will was quite possibly the best of the kid figures so far and probably had the best face until you lock in, but that's just the theme for all of these figures, man. I do love all the detail though. The final figure for this time span was the 11 3.5 seconds after stepping foot in Chicago. And I'm so glad they revised their work from that previous 11, because this one actually looks like Millie Bobby Brown. The accessories this time around weren't as great as the original release, but she really did show so much improvement in the sculpt work from the previous 11, face-wise. So if anything, they were locking in and only improving. The last 3 releases for 2018 were very different from one another. The first was Barb. Remember when people cared about Barb? What happened to her? Anyway, I guarantee Joyce, Jonathan, Steve, or Nancy would have probably sold more, but hey, Barb was here and yeah, that's Barb. The next release was this 4-pack based on the Halloween episode in season 2 where they were all Ghostbusters. And the theme of a good sculpt and just an overall good figure continued with these guys. I'm so glad McFarlane at least improved the faces because it makes for a better figure overall. It's still kind of uncanny, but it is what it is. But the amount of detail on these figures is just as great as usual. Each one having different shoes, them all being different heights, them having different nameplates. And I'm not sure about Mike and Will, but Dustin and Lucas for sure have different head sculpts. Dustin even comes with Dart, which is just awesome. Lastly, for 2018 was this little Dart dude, which you could squeeze to reveal his pre-Demogorgon face. And you know what? This little dude is pretty chill. I rock with him. Anyway, Stranger Things was off to such a hot start, and things would only heat up from there. But before that could happen, Season 3 of Stranger Things released on July 4th of 2019. Very patriotic. But the season started pretty bold with a new Russian plotline that has them trying to open gates to the Upside Down because of Cold War shenanigans. In Hawkins though, everyone is booed up, except Will, who is still sensing the Mind Flayer's presence, which isn't the best mood setter, but Dustin, Mike, Lucas, even Max's brother Billy is getting his money up with Mike's mom. But just as he's going to meet up with her, he gets got by the Mind Flayer, who starts building his army through Billy. Also, the Russians start doing Cold War things in Hawkins, which is decoded by a new character, Robin. But their snooping around gets them eventually captured, but they get out of it. As the Mind Flayer keeps building his army, the gang stays on Bro's trail, and eventually they find out that the Mind Flayer is coming for 11, and in disgusting fashion, he does. But famously, good guy Billy sacrifices himself to save the kids. Over at the Cold War camp, they met this dude, Alexei, who gets absolutely cooked. So they avenge him, but Hopper is disintegrated in the process, so lose, win, lose type thing. But after everything is said and done, Hawkins covers the whole thing up. 11 in the Byers household moves away, and gasp, Hopper is alive and deep in Russian territory, so that'll be fun. Also, the Mind Flayer is far from dead, so see you in 2022. This was for sure the shortest recap because, I mean, stuff happens, but it's really just a season of building up to the tipping point, if you know what I mean. I skipped over the whole Mike and 11 love plot because you knew they were getting back together for real, but Season 3 was great. But with the fresh release of Season 3, it was time for McFarlane to pop back out in what would turn out to be his final run with Stranger Things. So let's see how he did. The final figures were just McFarlane coming full circle, as the final figures are the same as the first figures, with Season 3 11 and Hopper. You can for sure see the growth within their action figures by just comparing and contrasting. Both their outfits and packaging represent the brighter season 3, and their faces had gotten so much better. Like, these are just good face sculpts. These are just really good figures, and they stayed within the realm of quality for McFarlane in the sculpt and accessory department. I do believe Hopper is a better figure overall than 11, but both are good. It sucks that McFarlane just didn't continue the license before the cool characters / designs got introduced, but oh well. I do wish for this final wave that could've went for Steve or Joyce. I don't know, man. Have her come with the lights or something. But I respect them for ending where they started. But as the time passed, the love for Stranger Things figures did too. That was until season 4 hype started building more and more, and as different trailers dropped, each with millions of views, it seemed like every week there was a new Stranger Things collab. It was really only a matter of time before the action figure department got the same love, and that time would come in 2021 and beyond. In 2021, 2 years after the last release, Bandai announced and released their own Stranger Things figures. They made these Fright Features figures, which called back to the 80s Ghostbusters figures of the same name and the same play features. The figures released were the main cast of the first season: 11, Mike, Will, Lucas, and Dustin. The play features do make them look really creepy and of poor quality, I can't lie, and my dog Will can never be normal, but he was honestly probably the best one, alongside 11. But you know, they're all okay. They're for playing rather than aesthetics for sure. Each kid did also come with a Build-A-Figure piece for the Demogorgon, and if anything, these figure companies gon' cook with these Demogorgon designs no matter the scale, because even if these figures are very simple, the demo is just it. But Bandai would have another chance with this type of sculpting and paintwork with both their Demodog and their Demogorgon. These were much larger figures than the Fright Features, but weren't as monstrous as the McFarlane Demogorgon. That wasn't the only difference, as this is a clear downgrade from that beautiful piece of art. This is just a lower articulation, less detailed shell of the previous release. I don't necessarily like this one if you can't tell. The Demodog is basically the exact same story, but this is our first Demodog, so I have less harsh words to say about it. It's just mid. I would have loved for like an Alice Madness Returns Cheshire Cat type figure for the Demodog, but oh well. The final Bandai figures for 2021 were the closest thing to McFarlane's run with the Void series. They were like lesser quality SH figure arts with the DNA of SH figure arts still present, but these were indeed of lesser quality, as the first figure, 11, was mid, just mid, and honestly the McFarlane just did better. In the Void series one, there was far less detail, but she did have more articulation, and I don't know if I like that trade-off. I feel like for Stranger Things figures where the show is very set in its style of being kinda gritty, it needs that realistic touch rather than more articulation. Both would be great, but if I were to choose one, I would go the McFarlane route rather than the Bandai route. But the Void series is only just now starting, so let's move on to 2022. 2022 would be a very fruitful year for figures because of by far the biggest and most ambitious season at that point, season 4, releasing May 27th of that year. And like I said, it was supposed to be the biggest season so far, so let's get to it. The season starts with a flashback of 11 seemingly killing all of the experimented kids, which is pretty messed up 11. But we go to the future, the 80s, where 11 is being bullied. Will has zero interest in girls, Lucas has drifted from the group, and the group in question, Mike and Dustin, hang around Johnny Storm a bunch. At the same time, Hopper is stuck in Russia as a prisoner. Johnny Storm is an outcast, but built a connection with popular girl Chrissy, who gets cooked, and I mean cooked, by an invisible force. And my goat Johnny Storm is blamed by the town. But Dustin and Mike know that bro is innocent. Nancy is also investigating with everyone's favorite character, Fred, but he also gets demolished by this invisible force, now named Vecna. Joyce and Bro fly to Alaska to help Hopper out, who is just not having a good time at all. But they end up in this whole thing with Yuri. I'm not gonna lie, this Russia plotline is so snooze fest. That's why I barely covered it in the seasons before. But anyways, back to the good stuff. It's discovered that Vecna's targets are suffering from the same symptoms as Max, and yeah, she's the next target. Luckily though, she's saved by music. All while this is happening, 11 is trying to get her powers back via the lab work that gave her these abilities in the first place. At that same lab, she remembers when she had to slime out 1, and she sent that dude flying, which turned him into Vecna. She also learns of the gang's plans to lure Vecna out, so she torches everyone in that lab and goes into Max's mind, right in the nick of time to confront Henry, who's looking very dashing these days. But her power isn't enough, and Max genuinely dies, which is enough for Vecna to open giant tears through Hawkins, leading to the Upside Down. But they torch and shoot Vecna, so he's probably dead, no need to worry. While this was happening, Hopper fought a Demogorgon in Russia, and yay, now he's saved. Also, Johnny Storm died, and Max was brought back to life, but she is just not good at all. This is where the season ends. Not sure if Vecna is alive, and a giant tear through Hawkins. Absolute peak. Season 4 of Stranger Things was hyped to be the biggest season, and it didn't disappoint at all. The evil year of 2020 definitely affected its development, but they got it out, and it was surely worth the wait. As pretty much everywhere you went, people were talking about Vecna or Max or Chrissy or Eddie. You get it, it was so much fun. With such massive reception to the season, it was no surprise when the figures started rolling in. And who better to start with than where we left off, with Bandai. And they released Hopper, 11 in her lab outfit, Eddie, a large-scale Demogorgon, and Vecna. The 11 was pretty much the same story as the original, and I really do miss the hyper-detailed McFarlane figures, man, because these are just boring to look at, I'm not gonna lie. They don't inspire hope. I like the articulation improvements, but I feel like the Stranger Things figures kinda required that realistic touch. This is how I feel for Hopper, Eddie, and 11, honestly. Hopper and Eddie are straight up hideous, dog. Like, good God, I don't know what they were cooking. Especially with Eddie, he's just flat out ugly. Hopper just doesn't look right without the facial hair, and I know they were going for the show look, but that don't mean it's looking good. So when you choose an already ugly design, you better make sure it's a perfect figure, and this is far from perfect. And Edward over here, no. Also, still no accessories. The last two should be slam dunks though, in the Demogorgon and Vecna. The Demogorgon, despite being pretty good, I just can't help but compare it to the McFarlane Demogorgon released 4 years earlier. And I don't think it's close, honestly. The Bandai figures are just straight up lesser in terms of looks. The Void Series demo is shinier, which is kind of more screen accurate, but it makes it look cheaper. I'd prefer the McFarlane look because it just has a sharper look to it. And I'm comparing so much because they were around the same price, so I don't care, man, there's no excuse. And the other one came out 4 years earlier. The final figure of the Void series to this point was Vecna. And he was by far the most anticipated figure because, I mean, he's just so tough. And I definitely can tell it's the figure they locked in on the most. The articulation seems to just work here, and everything coming together makes him the best figure in the Void series. He's surely not perfect, and definitely looks a tad bit awkward in certain angles. There's surely more Bandai could have done, and I wholeheartedly believe McFarlane would have absolutely cooked with this guy, but all recognize game, and this is game. There was also this vinyl Demogorgon figure from Bandai, but we do not care about bro. The new season apparently woke everyone up, so there were 2 more releases for 2022. Both were vastly different, but I appreciate both of them. The first and more underwhelming of the 2 were these TMNT X Stranger Things figures by Playmates, who are famous for making literally all Ninja Turtles figures ever, so they knew what they were doing. I'm more concerned with Dustin, Lucas, 11, and Hopper. These were based on their season 3 looks, and I actually like these aesthetics. I feel like they knew they couldn't go for the hyper-realistic look, so they leaned more into the simpler style while still capturing the details that make the characters them. I feel like Bandai didn't know their limitations, so they were in the middle of these two, and it just resulted in an awkward look. But these just look better, even if they are less realistic. This is a better looking Dustin and Lucas than even McFarlane could conjure up, for sure. And 11 and Hopper have their defining features present, which I think is something McFarlane and Bandai struggled with. Articulation wise, it was standard, but I mean, it's still good. They had a lot of accessories, so I think these were worthwhile figures. The second company to obtain the Stranger Things license in 2022 was Threezero. One thing Stranger Things had been missing when it came to action figures was true 1/6 representation. But Threezero came to play, and with their first 2 figures in 11 and the Demogorgon, we can see that they had something special. This is just a great season 1 11 with both head sculpt and actual clothes. And she even came with her hospital lab gown thing, and it had scuff marks in it. There was also clear distinctions between the different cloths used between her jacket and her dress. And going back to this head sculpt, man, like that is Millie Bobby Brown. Like it looks really good. I love the subtle differences in the head sculpts, but I would have liked for a bit more of an angry look in the nosebleed head. The Demogorgon though, dude, my god. Everything I glazed about the McFarlane one is here, except it's in the 1/6 scale, so it's amplified by like tenfold, dog. They made the scaly, wrinkly skin moist looking and got each grotesque detail down with the flower head and even the closed head. The flower head and the closed head both had the correct amount of detail. He scaled so perfectly to other 1/6 figures as well, man. They started out so hot and kept that momentum with their next releases in 2023 with Lucas and Dustin. Starting with Dustin, and first off, I think the head sculpt here is definitely a lesser look than 11 and surely lesser than the Demogorgon. And he actually doesn't come with another head, so we're just kind of stuck with this, and I don't know if I like it too much. I see him in there, but it's just off, just a tad bit. He for sure had the best accessories so far though. Shout out to Dart, man. I love the different cloths used in his clothes too, just like 11, and I don't know what more I can say. This is bro. Lucas is the exact same story, he's just as good as Dustin, and the 1/6 Stranger Things collection was really starting to build. McFarlane came back one last time in 2023, but the magic was just gone. Instead of returning to their 1/12 line, they went for their Page Punchers line. It was a set of smaller scale figures that came with a comic for whatever franchise it was going over. And I like the idea, but figures wise, they were just kinda underwhelming. It doesn't help that I don't collect this scale, so I feel very meh about these guys. 2024 was the first year in a while that nothing really would come out for Stranger Things. It was really only the two Threezero releases, being Will and Mike. Starting with Mike, and I definitely think he's the worst out of everyone released so far. His head sculpt is just too uncanny. It doesn't really look like Finn Wolfhard, does it? He also kinda has the weakest accessories of the bunch, and the only saving grace is the different cloths, but that's used with everyone. Will, on the other hand, is much better. Not only does he actually look like bro, but his accessories are really good. I love the drawing especially. It looks like it came straight from the show. Will overall is just a better figure, and I think they were really starting to get confident with these guys. But that was really it for 2024. That's because it was really just a calm before the storm, because the next year, 2025, there was indeed a storm approaching. The final season of Stranger Things, which was actually said to be the biggest and most ambitious. So leading up to the release of Season 5, Threezero released their two most recent figures in Hopper and Vecna. Even if we haven't seen Hopper in this fit for a minute, this is the definitive Hopper outfit and you can't tell me otherwise. I'm so glad Threezero recognized that and just put their all into this guy. This was their best head sculpt, and accessory wise, he just may have been the best as well. Threezero really put a lot of care into Hopper, but I'm not gonna lie, their best release would come a little later with Vecna. I might be a tad bit biased, but I don't care, dog. This is sheer perfection. Every little gross detail on this guy is here. It's sculpted and painted to perfection. He's so gross and has like a moist look to him. I think it's so cool. I do wish he came with like a tentacle piece or something, but when your sculpt work is this good, not only in the figure, but also in the accessories he does come with, I just gotta sit back and recognize game, because this is a perfect 1/6 figure. If I would get a 1/6 Stranger Things figure, it'd be Vecna. Threezero also revealed they'll be coming out with this Eddie in the future, and I'm kind of just now realizing I really haven't called him Eddie this entire video, but oh well. He looks really, really good and actually looks like Joseph Quinn, which is already a step up from everyone else who's made a Joseph Quinn type action figure. I'm really excited to see how he turns out. These promo pictures look spectacular. As time kept inching closer to the release of Stranger Things Season 5, Jazwares picked up the license and would release both 1/18 and 1/12 figures, and that sounds nice until you look at what they actually would be releasing. These things are trash. They're trash. I'm not even trying to hate for real, but like, dog, what am I looking at? I'd say Will and the Demogorgon are the best of the bunch, at least for the 1/18 scale. But even then, they're still ugly. Don't even get me started with Hopper and 11 though, dog. Like, what am I looking at? That's just some dupe they found on the street. There's also Steve with the van, and these are... These are indeed Jazwares figures. Hey, leave it up to Jazwares to simplify designs. You may be thinking there's no possible way the 1/12 figures are this bad. I don't find joy anymore. Why can they never get bro's face correct? I will recognize that this is a really, really good Demogorgon. It's up there with the McFarlane, honestly, and it has its own charm about it. It's based on the Demogorgon we see in season 4, the more bruised and battered one, and they got that down perfectly. I love its articulation because it does blend in perfectly with the sculpt of the figure. So I think it is the best of these three. 11 is okay. I like what they were going for. It just falls short in the paint department, I feel. The sculpt is pretty decent and it looks enough like Millie Bobby Brown, I guess. It's better than Bandai, I'll give them that, but it's only kind of mid. I like the soft goods though. Dustin is just, boy, don't get me started. At least they have good accessories. It seems like the figures are constantly regressing, which sucks because, dude, the figures for Stranger Things could be so generational, but I feel like design-wise, it's been progressing since McFarlane, and I honestly don't think we'll ever get back to form because, I mean, the show's ending. I do hope, though, that we do get more quality figures for Stranger Things. Like I said earlier, I'm filming and recording this before the part 2 and final part of the last season have come out, so I don't know how it ends, but so far it's absolutely peak, and I can't wait to see what it cooks up. This show is a cultural icon at this point. It deserves good, faithful action figures, but I don't know. Tell me what you think. But that was the entire history of Stranger Things action figures. Let me know if you have any thoughts on this subject. Let me know if you think that Jazwares figures and the Void series are actually really good figures and I'm super ooper duper wrong and I'm an idiot. And yeah, and for saying all those harsh words, you should definitely like and subscribe and do all those silly things. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed. If you haven't, check out my Game of the Year action figure tier list video. I think it's really good. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, comment. Scoops ahoy.